Hi, Gina. We have another pilgrimage person here that was on our pilgrimage. There's two of it. They keep following, we keep running into each other. It's so fun. It's so fun because we did have a really good group, and I found that not everyone is near, somewhere in Australia and Sweden and different places in Wales, but the people, every time they do run into each other, and they're all really happy to see each other. I have had pilgrimages where people were not that happy to see each other again. So sometimes it's like that, but we were really lucky. So thank you very much for coming. So tonight's topic is about dealing with difficult people. So I'm like, where is your wife? I can't see.
I try to.
No, in the back.
Here.
Oh, there you are. I'm like, where did she go? I was looking for your hair. I'm like, where is she? After all the questions, I'm like, she has to be here tonight. She goes, lovely to see you. I'm joking. It's okay. So let's just take a moment to bring ourselves here into the space. And just working to get our motivation in a good orientation. So if you'd like, you could close your eyes for a moment. And really allow yourself to settle here in this room. As much as you can, letting go of the outer distractions. Deepening your breath. And reflecting on why you came here this evening. What you would like to hear about this evening. And from there, is it possible to put your mind in as positive a place as possible? So, and you are in charge of your mind. You are directing your awareness. It's up to you in which direction you want to move your awareness. It could be towards a bad mood, wallowing in that. And then you have to think about, for what purpose? You can change that. You can change anything you like about your mind. That's what Tibetan Buddhism says. You can change anything about your mind. It's absolutely possible and within your reach. So one of the keys to this is considering others. Considering others more than myself. We talked a bit last night about depression and anxiety, which are very real conditions on the planet, very serious conditions on the planet, especially with a lot of young people. Sometimes we have unrealistic expectations that contribute to that. Sometimes there could be a physiological imbalance. It sometimes is helpful for us to get professional treatment or advice. It can be helpful. Just becomes a habit in the mind. But one of the keys to breaking out of it is to accurately analyze your situation of what you're depressed about, what you're anxious about, because more and more it begins to unravel and dissolve when you start looking at it. trying to find that root cause. Very possible to get real with yourself and start to change those experiences. But one of the keys, again, Tibetan Buddhism says, is if we can stop thinking so much about ourselves and obsessing in that way, which sometimes we do, directing our awareness out, considering others, considering how we can help others as much as we can. So as a human, we're limited in how we help others because we don't know everything. As a Buddha, which means fully awakened being, we know everything. And then you have every ability to think, say, or do whatever's best for all others. So if you'd like to include that notion of benefiting all others in your motivation, feel free. Take a moment right now to set a good motivation for this time. So right now I'd like you to imagine in the space in front, I'd like you to place one difficult person in your life. One difficult person. Somebody other than yourself. Just choose one person. I'd like you to recall, if you can, a recent interaction that you've had with them that was negative, that made you upset or a bit off balance. I'd like you to go back to the incident. You can also bring up something long in your past if you want to, if you can't think of anything recent. Don't worry too much about who you're choosing, what you're choosing. Just select a person and think about this incident now, this interaction you had with them that was negative. I want you to roll through a little bit of the interaction. For instance, what they said, what you said, what they did, what you did. Play a few bars of it as if you're watching a video. And just roll it out exactly as it happened. Exactly as you remember. And I want you to notice how you're feeling right now in relation to this interaction. So pause the video as if you're pausing the video. Just stop it wherever it is. Please look across at your difficult person right now. Notice how you feel. How can we change this situation? This happens to us over and over in life. Sometimes we get tired of it. That's a good sign when you're tired of it, because that's when change happens. So I'm sick of this pattern, tired of being upset about this, tired of this person, want them to go away. How do I make them go away? So look over at them, even with whatever you're feeling right now, if it's negative. You have to start analyzing. You have to start analyzing the situation realistically. It's easy to make them other and hate them, be annoyed with them. If you want to change that pattern, you have to start analyzing, checking up, and asking questions. Number one, what do you think their motivation was in this situation, in this interaction? So this is interesting. You don't have to follow the exact steps like this, but when we're annoyed with someone and consider them other, we never consider what's going on for them, rarely. It's all about me. That they are interfering with my agenda, they're doing this to hurt me, they're in my way, they're a pain in the butt, on and on and on. I don't want them in my scene, but what about them? So what do you think their motivation was, and did they accomplish what they want to do from this interaction? What was your motivation in the interaction? Did you get what you wanted? So Tibetan Buddhism takes it a bit further and acknowledges, as you look across at this person again, keep looking at them, just imagine they're there in front of you. And in your mind, say these words, just as I want to be happy and don't want to suffer. Look across at them and say to them, you want to be happy and don't want to suffer. Just think that in your mind. Just as I want to be happy and don't want to suffer, you want to be happy and don't want to suffer. And you can even look across at them and consider they want to be happy and they don't want to suffer, just like me. Fundamentally, you want the same thing. Fundamentally, you want the same thing, and now you have something in common with them, that you both want to be happy and you don't want to suffer. So I realize that sometimes people have a different idea of how to go about and get happiness and avoid suffering than you do, and it puts you at odds. But you have to acknowledge in this exercise that fundamentally, we both want to be happy and we don't want to suffer. So Tibetan Buddhism has another layer to add to this. As you look across at the person, this person has Buddha nature just like me. This person has Buddha nature just like me. So what Buddha nature is, it doesn't mean you're a Buddha. It means you have a potential to become a Buddha, a fully awakened being. That's what Buddha means in Sanskrit. You have a seed in your mind, just like them, that can ripen into a fully realized being. And why you're not a Buddha now is that seed and that potential is obscured by veils of delusion, like anger, hatred, desire, attachment, confusion, jealousy, fear, anxiety, depression, arrogance, delusion. And they cover over and obscure Buddha nature, our Buddha nature. But you and your difficult person, every being with a consciousness, every being with a mind, has Buddha nature. So now you have a second thing in common with this difficult person. Just keep looking, reflecting on them with this knowledge now. Two things in common. How much do you know about your difficult person? Do you know what motivates them to do certain things? Do you know that their child is sick? They have financial problems? They were recently in a car accident? They hate their job? Could some of their interference with your agenda be non-personal, meaning it's not about you? It's about something from their side that has set them off balance? Are you interacting with them on a day they may be in a bad mood? Could we consider that? Give them some space? So take a moment right now, in a sense of exchanging yourself with them for a moment, as if you're looking out of their eyes, looking back at you, angry. We have an expression in our culture, put yourself in someone else's shoes. So imagine right now looking out through their eyes, being them, and look over at yourself as yourself is angry at them. So at a higher level in Tibetan Buddhism, we consider, let's call this person the enemy, even though that may be stronger than you feel, or other, difficult person, like that. And actually, there's a tradition and there's a practice where we start to cherish this person. And the reason is because it is the enemy, it is the difficult person who really causes you to practice. It's like an insistence on your practice. So come back into your own body, looking across at them again. And what I mean is, when we're surrounded by friends, it's easy. We like everyone. They like us. We help our friends. They help us. They don't interfere with our agendas. Easy. But when somebody else turns up that pushes our buttons, you have to start practicing. It's not easy. You can fall into the rut of being angry and hostile and alienate yourself from them. We have enough of that on the planet. We don't need to add to it at this point. So our job, if you're interested in this path, I think our job for anyone on the planet is to practice basic kindness. Basic kindness. Everyone deserves that. And often they have become a difficult person because they haven't gotten a lot of kindness in life. So they don't know how to practice it themselves. So we don't need to fall into the rut where we are not going to practice kindness. We're bigger than that. So you look across at them. This is a precious treasure, this person. Why? Because it's through them that you can develop patience. You need to perfect your patience to become a Buddha. We don't necessarily have to exercise much patience with friends and people we like. But when the enemy turns up, that's the practice. So you need them to get patience. You need this person to get enlightened. Look at them and now. Notice any changes arising. With this idea that they are a precious treasure in our path. I can't get patience without this person. And I need this person. And I need them not in a sarcastic way, but they show me my mind more than anybody else. They show me where I need to practice. If you want to view this through the guise of emptiness, which is the profound teachings on the nature of reality, emptiness, that things lack inherent nature. They lack, and these are all synonyms for inherent nature, concrete existence, independent existence, existing from their own side, permanently, unchanging. You look across at this person. If they were inherently difficult person, the way inherent things exist is they don't have any ability to change because they're always that, like frozen in time and space. They're always that thing. That's what inherent existence means. And if that's the case with your difficult person, that they're inherently difficult person, then everyone would see them that way. Does everybody see your difficult person as a difficult person? And if not everyone does, could it be something in your mind that's projecting onto them? Could it be the ripening of a certain karmic imprint that got planted with your body, speech, and mind in the past? Some negative imprint that now is ripening and suffering for you? And the only way it's come to fruition is you're in front of this difficult person having a negative interaction. So look across at them one last time. And you're going to roll the recording back to where you start at the beginning, wherever that was that you started looking at the interaction. And you're going to roll the interaction out again like a video. This time, however, your difficult person will say and do exactly what they did before. From your side, would you like to try some new behavior to interact with them in as positive and kind a way as possible? And see if anything changes. And so you can begin to finish up the visualization, what you want to say and do. And then please acknowledge this difficult person in any way you'd like right now. And slowly allow them to melt back into the space from which they came. Please relax, and when you're ready, slowly open your eyes. So at the end of your visualization, I'm just curious, how did some of you acknowledge your person before they dissolve? What sort of farewell or greeting or yes, please?
What do you mean by acknowledge?
Like sometimes when you finish an interaction with somebody, you know, even in a visualization, sometimes we do visualizations of ourselves in front with loving kindness, and at the end, you know, some people said they found that they kind of bowed to the person, or they hugged them, or they just felt better and walked away, or said goodbye, or nothing like that. So did you have anything when I was saying, feel free to acknowledge them in any way? Just curious what was happening.
I send her to the place where she's comfortable. I can visualize her going to her safe environment.
That's nice.
Yeah, like okay,
different.
You're gonna be there. You're gonna be fine.
Yeah, and different than the beginning of the visualization, right? The very beginning.
Yes, I couldn't feel the love, but
That's okay.
not really there. But at least I said, okay. You're going to be, this is where you like to be, you're going to be fine here.
Oh, it's a nice offering to make to your difficult person, where in the beginning it was different, yeah?
So I see her like walking around her house, where she loved to be.
Great.
I was able to shake the hand of the person.
To shake their hand,
Yes.
Nice, yeah. Suddenly, some connection.
Yes.
In the beginning? No.
I was very angry at the beginning.
Yeah.
Upset.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't bother me anymore.
They didn't bother you anymore?
No.
Okay. So,
I walk away like nothing bothered me anymore. Coming from that person.
Right.
Like I understand that it can be a difficult situation in her life or something, some projection. And at the end, I didn't pay attention that much.
mm-hmm. So for most of you, something shifted, yeah? There is a shift, and so what I find is I can come out in the beginning, blah, 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 and talk about it. But I find it much more effective to do the meditation. And you can expand on it. And eventually I would get to Tonglen meditation, but we're at different levels here. So I thought, but you need to role play in it, meaning it's very key, that last part. So first you're kind of dealing with them, and we have to deal with them. And the reason is it's our mind. It's not the person. It's in our mind. Because some of you, when I asked you, how much do you know about the person? Some of you don't know that much about them, right? You think you do. You have stories about them. And are the stories accurate? Sometimes we're not sure. We elaborate and we think, and they look at us across the room in the wrong way, and suddenly you're like, what did I do? And this is another key thing we have to remember when that happens to you across the room. I hate to break this to you, but nobody's talking about you. I mean, it's always about us. The ego just won't let it. It's got to be about me. You're at a party and somebody, a dinner thing, you go to somebody's house, there's food people, there's an event, there's a teaching, and you see this person across the room, you're kind of excited, and they look and they give you some little, they don't even say hi. They don't even, and you're like, but you don't know that they're just, suddenly they're distracted, they're in the middle of an uncomfortable conversation, they have gas. You don't know, right? But these things happen. So why is it about me?
Right.
Right? But the unhealthy parts of our ego, it's always about me. It's got to be about me. So I've learned so much, I don't take it personally anymore. And if somebody really has an issue with me, eventually I hope they'll come and talk to me about it, because usually it's not about me. So why do I have to stay there? It's so boring. It's about me. It's about me. People have their own list. People are too busy to be thinking about you, their own stuff. So I know occasionally there's some scene, but generally 90% of the time not. So we march off with a story. The story's inaccurate, but I've already built an elaborate saga around it, and I'm invested in it. So you really notice just from, wasn't 20-minute meditation, maybe a little bit longer or something, but slowly I'm transforming this knot of this difficult person that only interferes with you. Right now, probably your difficult person isn't even thinking about you. But you spend time in that mind state. Okay, so slowly you start to consider, I wonder what their motivation was, wonder what goes on for them. Well, it's, maybe my story was wrong. This is the result of negative karma. That's all that's going on here. So what I'd like to do, if you have some idea about karma, the law of cause and effect, I don't want to negatively interact with this person anymore. Because the negative interactions I've had in this life or past lives, not everyone I know believes in past lives, but those negative interactions, the negative activities from me, got me here in front of this difficult person. That's what karma says. It's not out there. This is from my mind. My mind's showing me something now. I don't like it. I want it to go away. How do you do it? Don't respond negatively. Don't come into them starting a fight and criticizing them and trashing them and being rude to them, because you're just going to have to go back and repeat it again. Go back into some negative experience until you get it right. So, but these are slowly techniques that over time, when you practice, then you'll be able to remember karma. Initially, you won't. Initially, it'll be like, this person's attacking me, I hate them. So that's why I mentioned yesterday having a meditation practice that informs your external activities. There's a basis of balance in the meditation practice. It is possible for everybody in this room to get some sort of meditation reflective practice going consistently, because that's where, when they're in my face and I can't deal with them and I'm really uncomfortable and all that's going on in my mind is I hate them, okay? That's why when I'm done with that scene and I go home from work, or whenever that ends, I go back and then I sit on my cushion and go, what happened? I do not want to go back, and I don't want to be back in that scene. I don't want that to happen again. So what happened? And then you analyze like that. Okay, so what was there? What were they doing? What was it about for them? What was their motivation? What do I know about them? Some of you may know a lot about your difficult person. That's slightly different. That's okay. But you don't know their inner workings. Sometimes even you have a partner for 40 years. There's always something left to be discovered. You think you know it all, but there's always something left to be discovered. So you never quite know what really fully, unless you know their mind and you're clairvoyant. Okay, so here you are sitting on your cushion, and you may be upset, and your heart's racing, and you might have just got run into your car. You just had this interaction, you're in your car now, and you're like, huh. You can do it in your car for a moment. And make sure you're breathing. Opens up space. And give yourself, before you even start analyzing, give yourself a few deep breaths, and it just immediately starts to settle down. Because really, we're okay. I think for the most part in this room, I don't know all of you, but I think we're somewhat okay. And I'll just give you just a slice of it. We talked about this last night. Last night I didn't feel like we were quite done with anxiety and depression. So we can also bring that up tonight and even have questions. We weren't quite finished with it. But in general, what I was going to say is you're, having this moment, not happy, whatever, and we have to keep breathing as well. And we tend to tighten up. Have to keep breathing, okay? Just want to keep that space going, that everything's really okay. And the thing is just looking at the people in this room and knowing where you live, and I don't know all your lifestyles again, but we really have it pretty good compared to a lot of the planet, compared to a lot of the world. And I've done a bit of travel. I know 3 of us were in Nepal in October. It's a very, very poor country. And we were all exposed to things of people that you're kind of like, I definitely don't want that to be my life. There were some glorious things, amazing things there, but you're really opened up to suffering in a very different scale than we suffer. Blatant physical suffering in a very, very poor country like that. So you kind of think, well, what's the problem here, right? What's the problem here? And it's interesting, from all the times I lived in India and traveled in undeveloped countries and developed countries, and more what I notice, and the lamas have mentioned this too, is in undeveloped countries that we may call third world countries. I don't really like the word first world and third world, but undeveloped countries I usually use, is there's people carrying bricks on their head all day for like 30 cents, right, which I've seen in the hot sun, right? And you see beggars in India, people that have nothing, absolutely nothing, living on the street and sleeping outside. And so and yet somehow, when I've talked to some of these people, there's an acceptance to their lot. There's a system. If it's India is quite a spiritual country, so there is a system of kind of alms and people begging and people giving to them a little bit. The people there's a somewhat, calm to them. It's not an agonizing mental process with a lot of them, with some of the beggars that I've known and talked with, and there's like some simplicity, and they're kind of okay with that. It's not that they don't want their life to be something else, but there isn't this emotional angst all the time, and you want to roll into our culture, and we have every physical comfort, but emotionally, we're a mess. We're a mess sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
All of us, we're not different. Some of you in the room have great balance in life, but sometimes you're a mess. I think I mentioned, was it last night or something, or a nun friend of mine, and you're hanging out or something, and then one of them, I mentioned she spilled the coffee and she stubbed her toe, and she looks back and she's just like, and I said, what's happening? I'm a mess. Like, we have those moments. We've all been there. Some of them go on longer, but what we're trying to do is prevent it from going on longer. And if we just appreciate what we have, if we're just satisfied with what we have, really look at it, it's pretty glorious. It's pretty glorious. You have shelter, safe shelter, comfortable bed, relatively clean air to breathe, clean water, easily accessible, food, delicious food, easily accessible, a house, a room, an apartment, doesn't matter, It's amazing, that kind of stuff. You have clothes. You got maybe loving family and friends. I can go on and on. I can go on and on. So we have to stop for a moment and really acknowledge, really start to think about those things like that. So then you have this person. So just doing these exercises, you come home, you're aggravated, something just happened, you had an interaction, and you start checking in. You start analyzing what happened to them. They have Buddha nature. They want to be happy, they don't want to suffer. These are two fundamental things, and you have that in common with them now. And it's also nice for you when you think about if you suffer from depression or anxiety, I have Buddha nature. To remind yourself of that. Okay, that's a potential that can become a fully awakened being. That's extraordinary. All beings with a mind have it. I have that. I'm good enough. I'm good enough. I make mistakes? Sure, I'm human. That's the nature of being a human. So I can accept if I make mistakes and things. But it doesn't mean I ignore them. I'm going to learn from them. I don't want to make them again and again. But sometimes in the learning process, I do trip and fall again. And then I pick myself up, figure out, how to avoid that pothole. And then I get better and better. And that becomes a pattern. The healthier, healthier, healthier. So there's, some of you have read, it came out long ago, this book by Sogyo Rinpoche, the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, okay? So it's a good book to read. And he has a page in there, I forget where the page is from or what it was from, I've mentioned this before, and it says, this is practice, this is our practice, this is us with our minds, this is what we're trying to do. And it says, I walk down the street, I fall into a really big pothole. I didn't see it. It takes me a really, really long time to get out. I finally get out, and I continue down the street. Okay, then scenario number 2. I walk down the street. I see a really big pothole. I fall into it. Takes me a really long time to get out. I finally get out. I continue down the street. Scenario number 3. I walk down the same street. I see a really big pothole in the street. I walk around it, and I continue down the street. Scenario number 4 is I choose another street. That's spiritual practice. That's spiritual practice. We make mistakes. We make mistakes. We make mistakes. I get a little bit better at it, not making it as badly as it was, but I'm better. I'm learned a little bit, better and better and better and better. And now I have a new pattern. And I make a new neural pathway. Healthy, balanced, happy, positive. It's possible. Does it take great effort to get from here to here? I'm sorry to tell you. Yes, it does. But we're good at effort. We do effort. But a lot of our effort is, like this, seriously, streaming. And I don't know if you're aware, so you have to check yourself. I mentioned last night, I think, the sociology thing of the kids where they were not allowed on their technology for 2 weeks and the positive effects it had on them. But I just know myself, and then in discussion with my 3 nephews and a niece in their 20s, one is 30, and just when they stream videos or when they, what's the one they say, when they binge watch, So they hear a series, somebody said, oh, have you seen blah? And it's a series, maybe 10 episodes, I don't know, 6, 10 episodes, maybe more. And they spend an evening watching like 10 episodes in a row. And then I've seen them sometimes after that. Or they've just come from a binge watching thing. Their brain's like jello to me. They're like, and they're irritable. They're very irritable. They've been in a zone, and then you're trying to personally interact, and where are we going to have dinner tonight? What are we going to do? And when, I don't know. I mean, but they're older. They're old enough to know. They're not teenagers. But it's like, did you ever notice that with yourself? You're like, It's why I don't watch a lot of TV, because I just get zoned. You're in the zone. And I did this AIDS hospice work in San Francisco when I lived there many years ago. And you're paired you're trained first, and then I was an emotional support counselor. So then they pair you with somebody with AIDS who's dying. And in those days, in the 80s, people died really quickly of AIDS. There wasn't any great medicines. So one guy, my guy that I was with for 2 years, his friend, and I'd go over to his house to hang out with him and his partner and to talk with him. And they always had the TV on. And I don't think I had a TV then when I lived in San Francisco. So they have a TV on. And I had to put my back to the TV because it was so distracting. Like, it's there, and I wanted to watch it. I'd be like, it's like that. I call it the great nummifier. The great nummifier. So be skillful with yourself of how much time you're spending on devices. But check in. How do you feel after I just know for me with a lot of emails, and when I was running Miller Rapist Center, I must have been on the computer, I think sometimes like 16 hours a day. And I wasn't happy. It was really hard. My mind was just like, I was like in this position. So now I'm still on emails with the courses and different things and some course prep and the schedule and I really try to limit it every day that I'm not going to do that. I don't want it. That's not why I'm a nun, to be on the internet all day long and the computer. But I just notice when you get into a zone. So give yourself a break. They say like every 2 hours stand up for your posture, walk around, get some fresh air. But I think it's really healthy going out into nature and it balances the mind. So again, it will make us more flexible and open when we interact with difficult people, because they're always going to be there until we're Buddhas. But we also need this person to help us wake up to what's going on in my mind. How come I responded that way? I don't really want to be like that. And I haven't been seeing this with any of these people, but they're my friends. So this is the work. So I kind of need this person. So there's a famous story of one of the ancient masters. I can't remember Master Tisha or can't remember which one, but one of them had a horrible, horrible attendant. This great Lama had this really difficult attendant. Everybody had problems with him. And that people wanted him gone. And somebody came up to the Lama and said, like, get rid of him. Like, what are you doing with this person? And the Lama immediately was like, how else can I practice patience? Like, this is part of my work. I need this person. So could we get that way with people and problems where we're actually welcoming that? Because there's always, in samsara, there will always be problems. There will always be problems. That's its nature. Samsara, again, a Sanskrit term, to cycle, to turn. That's all it means, to turn. Tibetan korwa. Korwa. There's a big stupa in the Kathmandu Valley in Bodha where we were in October. It's huge, right? And people do korwa every morning and every evening. You walk around. It's a virtuous activity according to the Tibetan tradition. So Sherpas and Tibetans and lay people and monks and nuns and Westerners, and it's a beautiful place, especially sundown, sunset, and you walk around this big Tibetan village, and there's shops all around and restaurants, and people you meet a friend. I'll meet you at the stupa, and we'll do korwa, a couple of them. So you get the merit, you get some virtuous activities as you walk around, even if you're gossiping with your friend. That's the power of a holy shrine like that. That's the thing. I remember one time I was walking around the stupa in Bodh Gaya where the Buddha got enlightened. It's a very big stupa, tall, very different than the one in Kathmandu Valley. I was walking around with a friend from FPMT and a longtime person involved, very wonderful person, and we were catching up, and she said, and it's so great because, even though we can gossip, we're still getting merit because of the stupa, So samsara, to cycle, we're cycling through birth, old age, sickness, and death. All of that is seen as suffering. All that is seen as suffering. So problems are going to turn up. Negative people are going to turn up. Difficult people are going to turn up. Why not use it? Why not use them? Not in a negative way, but can I transform my mind? And you can. You have to make effort and you have to wake up and, sorry.
How do you balance that with your business, for instance? That's my difficulty right now.
Right,
I have a lot of difficulty with my business.
okay.
They get me really angry.
So the people involved in your business make you angry.
Like clients, suppliers.
Okay.
I have to deal with difficult people.
What kind of business are you in?
I export equipment, heavy machinery.
Okay. And you want to do this business?
To be honest with you, lately, I am not happy.
Okay, okay. So how long have you been in this business?
25 years.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, if you continue to be unhappy, you may want to look at, is it time to change the business or change my business or sell it or something like that? And if not, and it's your business, do you enjoy doing the business is one thing. The thing is, your clients, you wouldn't be in business without them, right?
Correct.
And the thing is, so Rinpoche, I mentioned, was teaching like this recently at the Kopan November course. It's a month-long course. And what he was saying at one point was, Buddhas come from bodhisattvas. I think I mentioned this, or was this at Thupten Kunga Center? Buddhas come from bodhisattvas. A bodhisattva is a Buddhist saint. A Buddhist saint. And there's 10 steps, 10 levels that you attain with higher and higher realizations to become a bodhisattva. And they're called bodhisattva bhumis. Bhumis, these levels, to become a bodhisattva. Okay? Bodhisattvas, in order to become a bodhisattva, you need bodhicitta. So bodhisattvas depend on bodhicitta. Okay, bodhicitta, bodhi is enlightenment. Citta is mind. The mind of enlightenment is, I want to get enlightened to benefit all living beings. So, and it's all about cherishing others more than yourself, and that's the source of your happiness. Okay? So I've got Buddhists. Buddhists come from bodhisattvas. Bodhisattvas come from bodhicitta. Where does bodhicitta come from? So bodhicitta is this idea of cherishing others more than yourself.
The mind? From the mind?
The mind, it's related to the mind, but bodhicitta depends on sentient beings.
Mm-hmm.
Bodhicitta depends on sentient beings. You can't attain bodhicitta without sentient beings. So you need sentient beings to become a Buddha. So you need your clients.
Okay.
You need all these people. You need
That
the
makes me really happy to know that I'm getting somewhere.
right. You're getting so, what was the word? Bored?
No.
Or
Somewhere.
I'm getting somewhere.
I'm getting somewhere. Okay, I thought you said I'm getting somewhere.
No.
So, I mean, I'm just giving a way you can think about it. So you have these difficult plans, just a way of transforming your bioreaction. Because the other thing is, for a lot of us, we all come from different kind of perspectives. And I meet people that aren't even Buddhist. And you know these people, right? And they have incredibly good hearts, right?
Mm-hmm.
You meet some people and you go, oh my God, this woman was so nice. Like, and sometimes as Buddhists we joke and we'll go, she was such a bodhisattva, that woman was, and and she's not even Buddhist, but you know these people, they're just, some people are just genuinely, I would say from past imprints in their mind,
Mm-hmm.
they're unbelievably good and kind. We all know people like that. And you know people that are not like that. They're competitive, they're angry, they're nasty, they say inappropriate things. It's all about them. Like, we know people like that. Okay, so we've got, and then some of us fall in the middle. We're like a little bit of a mix, like that. Okay, so we've got this perspective. So different people show up, and so one of my person I worked with at one of the centers in California, and she was our office manager. So she's interacting with the public all the time. People come to retreat centers. And just because somebody, and just so you can knock us off our pedestal right now, I want to say, just because somebody is Buddhist, they're not a Buddha because they're a Buddhist. And when someone's a Buddhist, that means they're a human being. And if they're a human being, that means they're flawed, that they make mistakes. I'm not laying a trip on any of us. I'm just saying people suffer from delusion. Human beings suffer from delusion. People have an idea that Buddhists are perfect, especially new people. And I've had people come to Buddhist centers And we were interviewing for staff at some of the retreat centers. Why would you like to be here? Why do you want to work here? I'd like to be at a peaceful place where everyone gets along. And I'm like, take it down the road, it isn't here. And it's a big shock for them. But you're and they'll be like, but you're Buddhists. And we're like, we're trying. Okay. So that's one thing we also want to remember about Buddhists, that they're not perfect. And who was saying to me the other day, maybe it was somebody in up north, about their daughter loves to poke them, and the daughter's not Buddhist, but she really likes to rile her mother. And so if the mother gets a little upset, she'll say, well, you're Buddhist, you're not supposed to be upset. But some of you might have kids like that are kind of like, that wasn't a very Buddhist response. My family will say that to me sometimes. Well, that wasn't a very Buddhist response, And I'm like, yeah, like just making a joke, So you've got the negative clients. And so this office manager said to me at one point, and she was kind of a newer Buddhist getting into the tradition, but she liked it, and she had done other spiritual practice, and she was an older woman, and she said to me one day, the whole idea about cherishing others, she's like, it's so great. She goes, I'm really bodhicitta, she goes, it's really the crux, and I'm like watching her, and she said, but the practice of it. She's like, I don't have any interest in doing that. Like, I'm just, and that's how a lot of us, you have your agenda for the day, your lists, and you get out there in the world and you got to go do it.
Yeah.
Like, this is what I need to do. I've got this pile of stuff. I want to, and it's like the clients are getting in the way. So can I maybe, this is in general with all of our difficult people now, how can I find a positive, realistic way to form healthier relationships with them? So your clients, can I form a healthier, closer relationship with these clients? In a sense, you're becoming friends with them. Now, you might say clients, that's okay. But if you have an attitude of friend with them, slowly, it takes time to evolve. Okay? It's totally going to change your relationship with them. And the thing is, anytime you have an other or a difficult person, we're always keeping them out there. I don't want them near me because they upset my mind. I don't want to be near them. In fact, I want them to go away. People get even stronger. If my boss just died, like everything would be okay. So check at times, because people have come to me. It's my boss. It's my boss. It's my boss. This coworker. I hate them. I hate them. I hate them. And they finally decide to get a new job. They just realize it's too much and I can't do it, and they've been looking and they get a new job and they're all excited. They said to me, I got the job and now everything's going to be okay. They tell me, okay. I'm like, in samsara? Right? In samsara, everything's going to be okay. Do you remember, I told you this before and I love this about, I want to say, samsara, right? So when I was at Vajrapani, this must have been in the 90s, so one of the cosmetic factories, whatever, cosmetic companies, came out with a new scent called Samsara. Well, we thought it was a riot, the Buddhists. We were like, Samsara, who wants more of that? Who wants to buy that, right? Because it's suffering, but it's a kind of sexy word, Samsara. So they came out with it. We didn't have TV there, but occasionally I'd be at a friend's house, and the commercials were on a lot, and there's the commercial. So you got like pink silk blowing across the thing, and a woman kind of, and you see the bottle, and then you hear the voiceover, Samsara. But like we thought it was hysterical. So, samsara, right? You don't want more of that. You don't want it. And then, so in samsara, my friend, the other person, or how do I create these healthier relationships with these people? And understanding that it's still based in samsara. Oh, I'm sorry, I meant to mention. So then this person got their new job. They got away from the horrible boss. And sure enough, in a few weeks, 6 weeks later, they come to me. I hate my boss again. The boss, very similar characteristics, the boss that hired them. And they're really stumped. Okay, but this is a great slice where you understand, and sometimes I'll say to them, oh, you're having a problem with your boss again? I'm so sorry. And they're like, what? Why is this happening to me? Why the victim? Why is this happening to me again? And sometimes if I know them well enough and I can joke with them, and I'll say, well, isn't it interesting that somehow you left that job and your mind came with you? Like, is it the boss there? Maybe it's your mind. Maybe there's seeds in your consciousness, this is what Tibetan Buddhism says, that are projecting on the movie screen of your life. That's what's making the film, the video of your life. Are the seeds, what's the imprints in your mind and your consciousness. Why are they there? From previous activities you've done with your body, speech, and mind. That's what Tibetan Buddhism says. And then that plays on the screen. You don't like it? Change your mind. You like it? Enhance your mind. Enhance those qualities in your mind. It's possible to do. So to go back to creating healthy relationships, I think it's really Buddhist or not, it's our job on the planet right now. People are alienated from one another. They're angry with one another, fragmented, polarized. Doesn't have to be that way. And it's even more important to reach across the divide to somebody that has a really different view than you, because you might learn something. But the other thing is, if you reach across with an open heart and a kind attitude, there is a human being there that could teach you something, but you have an opportunity to start a positive relationship. And you've got clients. So how much do you know about your clients?
Sometimes I do know, even their families, sometimes I don't.
Okay, because probably in 25 years of business, some of them I'm sure you know very well.
Correct.
And some you don't. So can you get to know the ones well? The ones you do know well, sometimes it becomes like a family, and families have dynamics. So do I have a level where I can sometimes accept a certain type of behavior because that's just how they are? Versus, am I close enough at some point to interact with them if something needs to change, to give them feedback or to...
I need them to pay me.
You need them to pay you. So is that one of the issues, that they don't pay on time?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's what I get really happy.
Okay. So that's actually a very tangible thing to correct. That's a really where it's, and sometimes not just them, it's just a way people do business.
Exactly. And I think I'm failing in some of that interaction because I'm not being clear enough.
Yes, and so it's a good feedback for ourselves of like, I need to be clear, and I need to have, and you can sometimes, I know people, and this is again a more tangible thing to correct, where you come back and they've had a way of working with you before, but you go, no, we have new procedures now, and basically it has to be paid within 30 days, or there will be an added fee. Things like that. I had somebody that didn't get their invoices out on time. So they were always inconsistent with invoices. So people didn't, like, some people were like, I pay all my bills the first of the month. So when the invoice was later than that, then they weren't getting paid till the next month, because they're like, well, we only do it once a month. So then he changed his invoicing pattern, and all the stress went away.
Right.
Because it was really like, I got it in, I know when they do the thing, and now I get paid within 2 weeks. So again, that could be just changing up some of the practices like that, rather than that it's about them.
It is about them.
Right. Okay, well, you can continue on that vein and you'll be really happy.
Right.
But that's the thing we see, is because for years we hold on to, it's about them. And most of the planet right now has a finger pointed out. Somebody else's problem. I'm unhappy, but somebody else. I know I can find the fault out there. I know I can find the fault outside of myself. So Master Shantideva also has the famous quote, if you want it to be soft when you walk, you can cover the entire planet with the soft material, or you can put the soft material on your own feet. Take care of your mind. And then I'm comfortable, regardless of what's happening. And sometimes people are difficult. I mean, some people have just a difficult personality. So I know for me, there's always been the acceptance. They're doing the best they can. We have jokes in our Buddhist community, our Buddhist family, FPMT. There's some real characters in the FPMT. Some of them are long-time monastics, monks or nuns. And you kind of think, she's been a nun for 30 years and she's like that, like yelling at people, and she sounds miserable, and it seems to be all about her. And one of my friends once said, well, imagine what she would be like without the Dharma. So that got me to think of like, well, I could just accept that, and sometimes I would call it a manifestation. This person's just manifesting like that, which is what my mind is able to see and is showing me. I don't really like it, but I guess, more that I fix my mind and kind of make it positive, and sometimes those situations go away, and I start having a better relationship with the person and seeing them in a different way. It's fascinating to me because more and more I'm convinced it's in my mind, it's not out there. And so sometimes you're stuck as well with someone. You've got a person in your life, they may be a family member, close family member, so you know all about them and all the things, and I know people get stressed around Christmas time, sometimes because the families are coming together and there's gift giving and people are cooking and you know that, old Uncle Harry is going to turn up or whomever it is, and nobody likes him. He's a pain, like that. And I was thinking of some characters in my own family, right? So slowly, these people are there, and there's kind of just accepting from the heart, opening your heart to these people, because maybe they're doing the best they can. I have a cousin who he's kind of like asocial. He doesn't have any real social skills, not with the family, I'll put it this way. Not when he's with the family, and it's kind of awkward, and sometimes when he comes to things, and you'd hear people say negative things about him, and it's interesting. And then there's a joke that he never brings anything. He comes for dinner, but never would bring anything to dinner. And so one time there was a joke where he and I think, were texting about where to pick him up from the train or whatever. I don't know what it was. And then I said my brother needed some more wine for the dinner, and I said something about, oh, would you mind? We're not running it. Could you bring? And he brought it. And then when he came in, and my brother didn't know, he said something about, and he brought a bottle of wine. It was something that somebody said, oh no, he was told to bring that or something. So you've got these funny people. I just find with the acceptance, but when you are stuck with someone and it's not changing, then I try to do a purification practice or Tonglen meditation. So purification practice, what I mean is we have Vajrasattva practice, and you're visualizing an aspect of the Buddha called Vajrasattva. And Vajrasattva is a crystal white being, and Vajrasattva kind of means Vajra is like a small thunderbolt that we usually hold in our right hand along with a bell. And the bell represents wisdom, the view. But the little thunderbolt, the Vajra in Sanskrit, Dorje in Tibetan, it represents the indestructible nature that you need to get enlightened, compassion, bodhicitta. And that's what Vajrasattva is about, that kind of diamond heart, indestructible, your method. How are you going to get enlightened with a good heart, with a big open heart? So that's a practice we can do with a certain visualization and reciting some mantras like that. Some people do prostrations with a practice called Confession to the 35 Buddhas. And it's very powerful because each Buddha that we're reciting and trying to visualize purifies something. So some people like to do more serious Buddhist practices like that. Tonglen meditation is simply giving and taking. So and it's very controversial, so I don't usually speak, I don't kind of go out there and talk about Tonglen with people that don't have some faith, because the meditation called giving and taking, but what you're actually taking, and you can visualize your difficult person in front of you, and what you'd like to do is imagine as you're inhaling, you're taking their suffering. You're taking their irritation. You're taking their lack of paying you on time. You're taking their obstinance and their, interfering with you. All that kind of suffering, things that make them miserable. As you inhale, okay, it doesn't harm you, but it's your kind of core, it's your heart center. Imagine a constricted knot of all your selfishness. all your self-cherishing, because that's what prevents us from being happy, all your self-cherishing, and it chips away, dissolves that. And then as it chips away, I have a sense of greater freedom and happiness. And then as I exhale, I offer them all of that. So the reason it was a secret teaching initially, Tonglen, is it's radical to talk to people about that. Nobody wants to take somebody's suffering and give away their happiness. Okay? It's a very profound practice. It's done as a meditation. You can do it many times. Sometimes I've visited sick people and have done it quietly next to their bed. Nobody needs to know what I'm doing. I don't get their sickness. It just helps dissolve my self-cherishing. Why? Because I'm thinking of somebody else. I'm thinking of helping somebody else. And for some reason, and I don't know why, but there must be some current that goes out like a ripple effect. But when I've done it with some situations with difficult people I was stuck with and nothing would shift, I spent time talking with them. You know, we thought we resolved it, and then they just went back to not doing their job or, harming somebody. And with Tonglen, somehow it really dissolves slowly. But you have to do it again and again and again. It's not just one time, 5 minutes, it's finished. Some faith in the practice. And it really does seem to move the energy. It's not that it fixes it again right away, but over time, I've definitely seen complete shifts in my relationship with somebody, from bad to very, very good. And sometimes you'll even say to yourself, I'm frustrated because this isn't, I don't know what to do. I've talked to them, I've reasoned with them, I've showed them the books, I explain this to them. You go through all your things that you've done, and sometimes you've done it several times, and the person's still messing up or showing up and interfering and making a mess. So then I go back to Tonglen at the end, like that. Make sense?
Yes.
So what do you think about your difficult person now?
Can I say something? I was live streaming your talk, and the difficult person gets on my... She never, because she doesn't...
Oh, she tuned in?
Yes.
Uh-oh.
Super interesting. And I started laughing. I was so confused because she doesn't speak a word of English. She never gets into my live streaming. And I was on Instagram, because there's a lot of people, and a lot of people are saying, translate that. This is so, they feel what you're saying, they don't understand. But she gets in, I saw her name.
She's a ghost.
Does she know we're talking about her?
No, not at all. But I found that it's interesting because of what you just said about the Tonglen and about the practice.
Right.
Somehow she feels that's...
And we need to fix things.
Yeah, that in a way, I bring her into the meeting.
Yes. But isn't it interesting how, and I think where we get stuck in general with difficult people, or what we were talking about yesterday, and if you want to talk about anxiety and depression, we get stuck in clamoring and grasping on to a reality that doesn't exist at all the way it appears to us. We're so mired in kaka. It's unbelievable. We're so mired in it. It's unbelievable. One time I was sitting years ago when I was a new Buddhist, I was at Tushita Meditation Center, Northwest India in Dharamsala. Okay, we have a center, beautiful center. I used to live there at one point, and I was sitting in the back with a monk friend, and it was monsoon, and there were cow patties. There were cows, so there was cow caca. It was all wet and everything, but then the sun came out and it stopped raining, okay? And this little patty was covered in flies, just covered in flies. It was humid out, and we're just sitting there, and you couldn't kind of not see the flies, and then we were talking some Dharma thing, and then he said, yeah, I think that the lamas, when they look at our lives, or highly realized beings, when they look at our lives, he said, it's like flies on shit. That's what they think about us. Excuse my French, he said, it's like flies on, we're, when you see flies on it, they love it. That's why they're there. It's like, oh my God. Great, you see this with insects where they come, and obviously they're there because they like it. Right? So look at us. Look at the stuff we hang on to.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I say it in an amusing way. I amuse myself with my own life when I'll be like, I'm hanging on to this pair of shoes that are like ripped and the bottom fell out, or it was my old car or something. And I really had very little, I was so impressed how very little attachment I had to this car I had for 10 years. And, but sometimes we are hanging on to stuff. We're hanging on to people. We have notions of how people should be.
Mm-hmm.
We're stuck in it. And the whole planet is going in that direction, so you get along for the ride.
Mm-hmm.
Samsara. Mm-hmm. And you think it's going to be okay, but nothing's okay in samsara.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't mean you can't enjoy. I enjoy more by really understanding the nature of samsara. Because I don't expect this samsara to be perfect. So when the vacation ends, I knew it was going to end. I even look at my dad with his life. He's almost 92. He had cancer this past year, and he's so realistic about he had to move out of his house because he couldn't walk anymore, and he lives nearby, and he moved into this senior place with assisted living in it. It's a lot for an old person when they leave their home, and he just adapted. He's just like, yep, And every week they've got a few names in small. They have a piano there, and there's small frames of who passed away in his building.
Mm-hmm.
And one week I went in and there were 3 names. That was a lot for 1 week. But he sees and he goes, yeah, one day it's going to be me. Like he just knows this is how it is. And it's so much easier, his life. He doesn't resist. He doesn't fight. I have other friends, their parents, it's a different trip. They hate where they're living. When am I getting out of here? You never visit me. I never, it's like a continual. So we always have choices of how we want to be, but we have to show up. And as Lama would say, are you touching reality? With your life, are you touching reality? Or am I living in some kind of higher notion? Am I letting expectations roll me, as we were talking about yesterday? Am I jumping into the friend pool because they all feel that, depression suits everybody? It's kind of the way to be now. So I need to kind of be and hang out with my friends out of peer pressure and be depressed like them. That's what's kind of cool at this point. So you do have to fight against that, to kind of wake up and to say, well, is this a healthy thing? Is this healthy behavior? What is really realistic here? What kind of pressures are we putting on our family and friends at times? Our intimate relationships, our kids, our parents. Do we have an agenda that we come in and, so when my father moved into this new building, I'm kind of the detail person of my siblings, and I'm there. One sister lives in far away. She's in England. So my brother and I are there, and I'm more the detail person. So I moved my father in. I moved all the clothes, all of his stuff in, what he wanted, organized it all, and then got the furniture for the small 1-bedroom. And so I was in this work mode when I'm there getting him settled a year and a half ago. And when I come there, it became this thing of checking his clothes, and they weren't doing the laundry right, and they weren't replenishing the towels, and they didn't clean the bathroom. And I was just, every time I came, it was like a chore, like, calling somebody and then getting on their case. And then I feel bad because then I don't want them to reflect like, his daughter's a bitch. Because, I want to deal with these people and how to, but it was kind of going along for a few months like that. And I got really tired. I'm like, I just want to go over and enjoy my dad.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So what it necessitated is no place is perfect. It's in samsara. Every senior place I've seen, and he's in a really good one, okay? They all have problems. It's not unusual. You have to stay on top of the care. So this place is quite good, but it's samsara. So they're not going to put away the laundry right. And sometimes the nursing staff isn't going to know about that thing, and they're not going to remember to do that. And, he certainly doesn't have short-term memory as much. So I can either keep banging my head against a wall, or I can relax, see samsara's nature, and go in and let go of the clothes for a day, let go of that, and hang out and sit on the couch and hang out with him. That's what I do now, and I'm much happier. And you know what? He's the same. Everything's still okay. It's okay. So his clothes, if they get washed on hot, are going to wear out a little bit more quickly. So what? I buy them some more clothes. It's not really it's like, why did it have to be like, why do they have to be arranged like that? Because my mind at one point said they have to be arranged like that. And then I'm like that. Boring. And so neurotic and so kind of, thinking it has to be a certain way. He's happy. He doesn't care. And everything's fine, actually. So there really isn't. So again, adjusting my attitude. Now it's fine. Now there's no problem. Yes.
Do you believe that there's such thing as like this idea of like a truly toxic relationship where it's like you've tried, and people start telling you like it's just like it's toxic, cut it, and stop trying?
Yep. There are. Sorry to break it to you. Mm. So you do need to break up with them now. No, I mean there are some really toxic, and I'll put it this way: I don't even know if you need to go to toxic. You have some old karma with the person. Mm. It's not working very well. Sometimes we have great karma with people. You meet somebody and just click. You're just close like this and immediate. I always love when I come down here because I always love to see my lady friends. They're just so wonderful. Each of them always like, hi. So you have these connections with people. And sometimes you have negative connections with people. And whatever you do, it's not going to work right now. However, I think if both sides agree skillfully to communicate and work on it, and you can change things. But if not, then you yourself can either let things go, let it be for a while, do some Tonglen meditation, keep them in a positive space in your mind, and things can change. But sometimes you really need a gap, a space, if you realize, I think it's wisdom to realize, what, this really isn't working right now. And I give one example on a different level, because you might be talking about an intimate relationship, I don't know. Sometimes we have toxic relationships in families from intense abuse. You were abused as a child, and the person never kind of owned it. You never got to tell your story to them about how they harmed you. And some people can't let it go. Some people have done incredible work with forgiveness in that respect. Because when you get to the forgiveness, and when it's really taking hold, that abuser doesn't hold you hostage anymore. Because if you can't let it go, it's like they continue to abuse you, even if they're dead. Like that. So one thing I did once, in a situation that was just a karmic, so there was a nun, in fact, she and I were talking recently about this, that came to a sister center an hour away. We were both working at these separate retreat centers. And she showed up at the other center. I heard she was being hired, and I never met her before, but I'd heard about her. And I knew that we had a connection to Laudo, to this retreat center. I'd never been there with her, but I knew she had been there. So I was kind of excited to meet her, and she'd been a nun for a long time, and I was like, oh, that's great, because I know she's connected to Laudo, that I've had a very strong connection with this retreat center. And she came, and then when I finally met her, she hated me. She totally hated. I was like stunned. She first ignored me, and then she clearly just hated me. And then she started interfering with programs. I mean, my story was she started interfering with programs we were doing by trying to get the teacher that we had gotten for a week's retreat, and then asking her to come and teach at the other center during the retreat that we're holding. And so it was just, and I'm like, why are you doing that? Like we've got a schedule with the teacher, and she didn't get it. She didn't, so she hated me. It was just, I'd say black, she'd say white. It was just, and I was like, oh, I never met her. So I thought, and it got really ugly, got really nasty. Of just these very bad phone calls where no cooperation on my part, on her part. So finally, I'm really into harmony, and I realized I can't have this going on. So I got a mediator, and she agreed. I asked, and it was the head of our organization who was visiting, and we met. The three of us met because I couldn't do it alone with her because you needed somebody there, and she agreed somehow we were going to settle this. So somehow it was that I was to start, and I sincerely apologized. So this is also a way to shift something with your difficult person, okay? And it really does shift. So you can always apologize. Now, I didn't think I did anything wrong in this life, but that's not the point. You don't want to hold on to, and I'm not going to lie and apologize and say I'm sorry when I didn't mean it. But something went down in my mind that created this. I really firmly believed it. I must have done something in the past, and I'd been a Buddhist for a while, so I was convinced it was from my mind. So I sincerely apologized to her, and I even said, as Buddhist, you can say this, for anything I've done in this life, said to you, whatever, and past lives. Like, I really am very, very sorry if I've upset your mind in any way. I really meant it. Because her mind was upset, and I think I was a part of it. If I've upset your mind in any way, disturbed you, I am terribly sorry. And I really hope you'll forgive me. And I said this like a couple, it was longer. And then, in some ways, I think this was brilliant. She threw it right back at me, right in my face. Those are empty words. She said like that, like with just viciousness. But really, when I look back, she said it because of such a miserable heart, is where she was coming from. Total sadness in her heart. Such a shame, right? But at first, it was like a dart. I'm like, oh, all right. And then I said again, and that was it. And then she said what she wanted to say. She didn't want to ask my forgiveness or say sorry, but whatever it was, I'm horrible. And I was like, okay, and I'm so sorry for that. And that was the end. So I just had to let go because I felt like I did everything I could do now. I didn't have anything left over. I didn't have any hard feelings for her, any bad feelings. And that night, very quickly that night, this was in the afternoon, that night, she didn't say anything to me. She gave me a little box of incense. She wrote some, didn't say, but it had a nice little saying on it. She wrote something about, and then we went for some months, and we were on the phone once after this, and I was kind of treading delicately. We were organizing a program. And then I said something, she was kind of mean to me, and I said something positive back. So this was how I was dealing with it. Again, I'm not going to create more negativity with her. I was adamant, determined, because I'd already gotten that. I've already gotten that back from her. She was mean, and then I said something positive, and then she paused on the phone. I remember her saying, "You never give up, do you?" She said to me. It was like the breakthrough. And I said to her, well, I just always believe that things can be better. Just like that. And she started laughing. And so since then, it got better and better and better. I mean, that must have been like in the 90s, long time ago, right? Better and better and better and better. To just at the Kopan course recently, we were sitting next to each other at something. And she brought up the thing. She goes, remember that time? And so for me, I had let it go. And I was fine. And every time I'd seen her, and sometimes she'd see me and she'd ignore me and not be nice to me. And I'd always be, hi, how are you? And when she'd be like that, I just let it go. It wasn't personal because I realized she did it to everybody. She did it to everybody. So I kind of had to let go and realize to some degree there's some imbalance for her, but I'm not going to hold that strongly to her and all that. And then we started talking. She said, remember that time we had that problem? And I said, yeah. And she said, well, we're okay now, aren't we? Like we kind of had a laugh, and she goes, we're okay now. And I said, we're totally okay. So, so it's amazing. And I hadn't thought about the incident in a while till she said, and I totally let it go. So I was fine after a while, but sometimes you do have to sincerely apologize. Can I work with the person? And I did some Tonglen with her and totally let it go. And now I fast forward like 15, 20 years later, I'd consider her a friend. She's not somebody I go to for advice and to share things, but I hold her positively out there, open my heart to her. And so it is possible that it could take a while, and sometimes you need a break from them. And she and I have had breaks. I don't see her all the time and like that. So you do the best you can. Mm-hmm. But the other thing is not to stay with somebody abusive, not healthy at all, to stay in an abusive relationship or to hang out, even if you're in a workspace and they're not treating you well, or there's sexual harassment going on, or just verbal abuse in general. It's not okay. So what I tend to do is, can you speak directly, gently to the person with a motivation of compassionate wisdom? you're coming from a good place. Can you either privately talk to them first? And we've had to do this sometimes at Buddhist centers and sometimes other times before Buddhist centers when I was managing people. And some coworker, that had a terrible way they'd speak to people, but you don't want to embarrass them in front of people. So privately do it. If it doesn't work after a while, get a third person in there as a mediator to discuss. We've talked twice about this. So you have a witness of somebody that's saying, I'm giving you a warning, like that. We had to do this with somebody at a Buddhist center who was very, very emotionally abusive to our staff. It was really frightening. And we worked with him for a year because Buddhist centers are like this, where you try, he was a very fractured person and he was a brilliant guy and he really was kind of verbally attacking our staff in a weird way. So we worked with 2 psychologists and him and tried, very clearly setting boundaries with him and actually in the final end having him sign something. So if he broke any of these things, then he was going to be asked to leave immediately so that he understood. So sometimes you have to set up something like that because you can't continue the negative behavior. Like, it's not healthy. So you have to find different ways. Each situation requires something different, something unique. Another thing we did was offices and businesses and Dharma centers and groups like that, they have a certain culture. Like sometimes we talk about FPMT culture, and that's our overall organization, the FPMT, the Foundation for the Preservation of the Mahayana Tradition. And it's a large international Buddhist organization. So there's a certain culture, and I know at the centers that I've run, part of our culture is harmony. Like that's a foundational building stone, is harmony. So a woman came and she was, I think she was really bipolar, off her meds. She came for a summer program. She was incredibly bright and interesting and creative, and she was very troubled. She had some really severe problems. I think it was a big denial about her illness, which is why you don't need meds if you're not ill. But she was ill. So what she had this habit of doing was, we had this lovely guy who was our manager, and he was new at the job and was new to Dharma centers, and she had this terrible habit of, in the kitchen, when no one was around, screaming at him. Or I'll put it this way, when I wasn't around, screaming at him. So there might be guests there. And this went on a few times for like over the course of a few weeks, until I finally was outside the kitchen and I heard her. I tried to talk with her before about it when he came to me, because he's a very honest guy. And she just denied and denied and denied. And I told her that that's not okay here. That's not part of our culture. We don't yell at each other. We don't. And then finally I heard her. And then that was her last warning. And then she did it again and she was asked to leave. And so you can set people up that, and you yourself, if you're running the place or you're involved, we're trying to also set an example to mirror the activity of the culture, to mirror what the culture is, like that. So I couldn't go around screaming at people or anything. And so sometimes you can just set very clear boundaries with people. I think it's helpful. Yes, Gina.
I feel like the analysis and the stuff that you're talking about, like when I'm here in this room or on the cushion, I see how helpful it would be and how beneficial. But when you're in the throes of it, or even before it happens, like sometimes just seeing someone's name come up, like they sent you a text, you don't even know what the text is, but just knowing it's there, like it's immediate. And so I feel like it's so hard to cut that. And then part 2 is I feel like I have such a strong habit of resentment that I know that what you're talking about would be beneficial, and yet there's a part of me that's like showing kindness or softening, like it's not. It's like letting them get away with it. Like I have a lot of "how dare you," and "how dare you do that to me" kind of stuff going on.
Okay.
So it's just really
so, and this is common for a lot of us. You're like, it's in my face. I can't do anything. Yep, it's hard. So, having the at-home meditation practice, why I say it's so important. But when you're in the face of it, so what's helpful is when you can reflect. If you can't get it in that moment, when you can later reflect on, look how it holds you hostage. You just see their name and you're like, it's only in your mind. And when you see their name, it doesn't bother them. but it bothers you.
Yeah.
Do you want to keep being bothered? So slowly we have to keep, you want to get the sense of samsara, that it's suffering. And most of us on the planet don't get it, even as Buddhists. Like we keep thinking, I went through this for a long time, I'm going to fix samsara. I will fix it. And you can't. So we keep thinking it's going to be okay, it's going to be okay. And for some people, that one person and seeing the name, they live with it. And they go, yeah, I can't stand him, but it eats you. They don't know, you know. So then you start to think, wouldn't it be nice to release this from my mind? And Tibetan Buddhism says, and it's absolutely possible to do it. So great that you're recognizing resentment in your mind. That's very powerful, that you're aware of that. Because we also want to start to notice not only the good qualities we have, that's important, but noticing, and we're more familiar with the negative qualities we have. Okay, so resentment, one of the negative mental factors, and it doesn't serve you at all. Doesn't serve, makes the heart kind of, you know, it's a hard place, not that happy in the space. I really don't want to be here anyway. So through again and again thinking of that process, you can sometimes come to a, I don't want to be in this space anymore. I don't want to be in this space anymore. And that involves dealing with this person finally at some point. So, you know, can you analyze what's wrong with them? Have you clearly pinpointed these are some factors that are really unhealthy?
In terms of the relationship, or
In terms
what
of them first.
what I
like,
think about in terms of like their motivations or
yeah,
what's
like
going on in
what
their
do you
life.
say about them in your mind?
Like there is a part of it where, like what you went through with the meditation, you kind of understand, like, well, maybe they had a bad day, or especially with one person, like I know the history and I know the suffering, and part of me says I would hate to be living in that mind, and so that I understand where that's coming from, and yet I still have this layer of, but it's not fair to me, you know, like how dare you, to me, as opposed to, like, I get that, but it's still like.
So are they doing something to you that repeatedly that is?
Yeah, I actually have two situations in my head. One is a very close family member. So it's a huge, that's the text where it's immediately like, oh, not again. And then I'm that person you talked about, who every workplace, you know, you go, there's like the same, you know, combative or passive aggressive person you're dealing with.
Okay.
And like, there's of course part of me that says, well, what's the common denominator? You know, it's me, but it's still like, you can't always challenge someone directly, because then it makes it worse. Then you feel like you're tiptoeing, and then I get resentful about, it's almost like I'm resentful of having to do the work that would benefit me.
There you go. We're our own best enemy often. You know, we're also our own best friend as well. So, I mean, I think you come full circle just realizing sometimes you just have to get down and do it. But part of it is what creates an antagonistic workspace is practicing some of the non-virtues in the past, especially divisive speech. Divisive speech and things like that. So I went back and looked at that because I had a workspace that was kind of difficult. And so what we do is we have 10 non-virtues that we avoid in teachings on karma. You know, because you hear about karma, cause and effect. I don't want this to happen to me again. How do I prevent it? Buddhism says there was a cause for it. I don't want to have that negative thing come up again with a nun like that or anybody. So how do I prevent it? I avoid the 10 non-virtues. What are they? 3 are related, are things you do with your body. 4 are things you do with your speech. 3 are things you do with your mind. So we avoid killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct are the ones of the body. Okay? And with our speech, we avoid lying, divisive speech, harsh speech, and gossip. And the things we avoid with our mind are covetousness, or being greedy, holding harmful intent towards others are called ill will, and holding wrong views are the 3 we avoid with our mind. Okay, so you may want to look at if you have any hint of divisive speech, talking about somebody behind their back, trashing somebody with your speech, those little things, being an instigator where you're like, do you know that he thinks that you're really you cheated him out of the other thing, and you're like, what? And then you say, did you know that she was? So if you have any of that, you have to get very, very skillful with your speech to not do that anymore, to notice when you're doing it, why are you doing it, what motivates you to do it. It's causing you harm, and you can go after the specific thing like that. And then I think being kind of authentic when somebody is bothering you, can you, even maybe with humor, but if you form a good relationship with them, and they in a sense can become a friend of yours, then there's more leeway to speak to them honestly about what bothers you. That's why I really like the idea of creating healthy relationships. It's possible with anybody. So one example I give too, and I think I mentioned this before at another time, this happened to me. So when I worked for this magazine in San Francisco, I was new on the management team, and we had to do this event right away, and I had to talk to the communications guy. And what I noticed in 2 weeks is that nobody liked him. And I'd hear people, we had an open office, the top was all open, so you could hear things, a terrible office design, but I could hear him, and I could hear him kind of what he'd say to people, and he was very alienated from people, and he was scary. And I had to do this project with him. And I'm new there, and I'm just like, oh, God, like this guy. But I was a new Buddhist. So I was a big coffee drinker at the time. And then one of our Buddhist exercises that I'd heard in a retreat was about bodhisattvas. And I didn't really quite know what a bodhisattva was, but they're all about taking care of others. And I was interested. And they said, and there's different kinds of bodhisattvas. And there's bodhisattvas that anticipate when you come over to their house to visit, and they watch where your eyes go, and they know exactly what you, and they're like, oh, do you want cake? Because they see you looking at the cake, or they're anticipating. And so one of the exercises was at your workspace, if you can you find out what people drink at the workspace, and you can offer them a drink the way they like it once in a while. Now, we do this for people at work, right? But we do it for the people we like, generally. You got your buddy at work. Hey, I'm going to go get some cappuccinos or latte. Do you want one? You do it, but you don't do it for this guy. Nobody would. Nobody did. So I kind of had this little game. This was my thing. I was checking Buddhism. This is how you check. You do an exercise. I had to do it myself. So I'm like, I'm going to get him a cup of coffee. First of all, I had to figure out, what does he drink? He drinks coffee. I'm going to get him a cup of coffee one day. Well, it took me 2 weeks to work up the nerve to do this, because it had to be the right timing, meaning his cup had to be empty in his office, somewhat empty. I had to have a reason to go in there. Like, I wanted it to be casual, right? I wanted to see what would happen, and I was terrified of him, right? So somehow there was something I was bringing in, and I had my coffee cup. Like, I somehow planned the day. But I found out, first of all, what he drinks. Cream, no sugar. I found that out from somehow being at the coffee machine with him or whatever. But somehow I found the perfect opportunity. Into his office I go, I've got this to drop off to you, and oh, would you like a cup of coffee? Nobody's ever said that to him, I don't think. So he was stuttering. He was like, he didn't know, he didn't have any context. Nobody ever asked him. So he fortunately said, he goes, oh, okay. He's going to take a chance. So he's taking a chance. This is how friendships start sometimes, right? And I looked at him, and I said, would you like a cup of coffee? And then I said, cream, no sugar, right? So now I got him off guard, because somebody took an interest in him to know how he takes his coffee. So he's kind of woken up to me. He's like, who is she? What's happening here? This is a new context for him. Scary for both of us, right? He gives me the cup, and I go, and you have to make a nice cup of coffee. You're not going to be like, here, jerk. Right? No, so I made a cup of coffee like I make for myself, for a friend, like a nice cup of coffee. And then I went by his office, brought it in, put it down on his desk, not expecting, just, here you go, no big deal, walked back to my office. That was it. We were friends after that. I had no problem with the project. And so what happened is, after a few weeks of this, and he and I laughing and great, and people in the office came up to me. because people wanted to know how to, and I said I got him a cup of coffee. It can be that simple. But if you genuinely are there, being present, not making a big deal of it, not expecting thanks, it's a way we connect with people. We have to try that. And it's scary with the big, frightening person. The person that I notice around them, I have so much resentment in my mind. I don't want that in my mind anymore. And it could be simple, like, I like your shoes. But you have to mean it genuinely. Is that a new blouse? Did you change your hair? It's really cute. And you mean it's a total way to connect people. I've had that many times happen to me, especially with somebody that intimidated me, that I was kind of scared of. And it's a nice, genuine way in. And why not put something positive out there? And slowly, you see, it may transform. Rinpoche even did it once with the student. I thought they were in Singapore, but I'm not sure where they lived. He was visiting Lama Zopa Rinpoche in the middle. And the host that had him, and I don't know if I have the story totally right of where it was, but the host that had him had a big fight with his neighbor. And these are people that were very affluent, and they had nice cars, and the golf course, and whatever it was, the guy was in the middle of this huge snit with his neighbor, this huge fight with the neighbor. And when he came in, and something happened, so when Rinpoche got there, something about the neighbor wanted something, and the guy was like to his wife, "I'm not giving him the. And so word got back to Rinpoche, and I think the guy went in to talk to Rinpoche to say, I'm having trouble with our neighbor. Like, we love our house, we're not moving, but there's been this really strong antagonism with the neighbor. And I think it got to a point where the neighbor took his key and dragged it along the guy's new car. Like, it got to this level. It's like, are we back in the playground? It's really... So he was furious, and he went to Rinpoche, and Rinpoche said, it's typical Rinpoche, do you, what does he like to do? Do you know him? What does he like? Something, and they determined that the guy golfs. They both belong to a golf club. And Rinpoche said, and the guy he talked to was quite wealthy, and so Rinpoche said, can you, and I don't even think he said, can you, he said, buy him a box of very nice golf balls, and you wrap it up in a very nice present, beautiful box, and you offer that to him, and you apologize to him for whatever harm you've ever brought to him. The guy was furious. He's like, I'm not doing that. Like, couldn't, he's like, he went to his wife like, no way am I going to do that. So Rinpoche said, you buy him, gold golf balls or something, whatever it was, you offer that to him. And he couldn't do it. I don't know, so a week went by, couldn't do it. And finally he decided he should do it. So he did it, offered to the guy, apologized. That was it. No problem. And the guy paid to have his car fixed. The neighbor said, I'm sorry, and I'm going to pay to have the car fixed. Like that. So because the thing is, if you continue to go along hating, alienated, it's just going to continue like that. Those are the imprints that go in the mind. We have a lot of them, so it's hard to undo it. It doesn't get undone in 1 second, but you have a choice. You can continue to be miserable and have that person out there in your life, and you see the name and it's irritating. Or, again, like last night, I mentioned, you notice your mind, and great that you're like, I have resentment in my mind, I see their name, I don't like it. Step number 2 was do something different. Number 3, do it again. Familiarize yourself with what you did, if it worked. So that becomes the habit. That becomes the habit. Like gentle deflection as well. Gentle deflection. And what I mean is, I notice where I'm living now, there's no Buddhists. Not many Buddhists. I'm living in my father's house, a nun alone like that. So, and what I notice is there's some family patterns, and something happens, and then I hear my family trashing people, or he, oh, stupid, da 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 da, and so I don't get involved in that. And sometimes I'll interject and say, well, find a positive quality about the person, to just introduce that into their realm a little bit, because they're not Buddhists like that. They're good people. So, but, they have habits. They go off in this direction, and I'm like, and you can familiarize yourself and go along with them. It's easier to be like, oh, yeah, but that's not who I am. And I'd rather also have them have some imprints of, but this person really helped you when you were in kindergarten. Like, remember that? Or, do you know, and I don't say it as a big judgmental thing. It's just like, but, oh, I remember that time we went out with her and she was so fun, and, you know, it doesn't have to be a big, heavy thing, but just to add a little something positive, I think is helpful.
Can I ask,
Is that helpful?
It is, yeah.
You got to try.
Exactly. Slowly. It's like I said, it's a lot of hard work. So
It's also a lot of hard work to continue the resentments, I find.
it's exhausting.
I find that really boring and exhausting. So I find that it's kind of like with this nun, I have to say it was freedom. I knew from my side I did everything right at one point, and I felt free. She didn't bother me anymore. I'd see her. I could see she was still bothered by whatever, but it had nothing sometimes to do with me. No problem. Easier for the mind.
so for example, for me, I can see what Gina was saying, that you have that and you try that compassion because you know that there's so much suffering. But for me, what brings in, and that's what I wanted to ask, what can I overcome frustration when I'm looking and I say in my mind, can you please do something? Look at your suffering. It's like, and there's a lot of frustration, of course, comes from anger and lack of compassion, I think.
Yeah, lack of patience, lack of tolerance, lack of acceptance, all those things.
And when I think of acceptance, then I in my mind think, okay, but, you know, it comes at but.
Right. There's always that but. Isn't
Yes.
that such a problem, that but?
There's this thing in the family, oh, you know, they're just guilt. That's the way they are. That's their personality.
Right.
And I'm like, no, but no.
Right.
You have to do. So for me, the frustration part that is looking at that suffering and that I'm trying to open up my heart and they feel it and they see it. They see how much they suffer, but they can. For me, the frustration part. How can I work?
So sometimes, and even when you see the resentment come up or the frustration is, and you're saying, so they're going down the road of they're an idiot, like, and you get frustrated with that, or you get frustrated with your own mind when it's telling stories like that.
No. When I see that they're always that victim, that they're
person.
always, you know, all about them, for me, it's that frustration.
So sometimes there's nothing you can really do at that point, and then it's about mindfulness. You know, I breathe in, I'm uncomfortable, I breathe out. Sometimes it's just that, and you can't fix it at that moment or change it, and so sometimes I just leave it there. And the thing is, you can't wrestle with everything too all the time. Like, you need to give the mind a bit of a rest, and so I just use basic mindfulness practice where samsara is uncomfortable, you know, and that's a shame about this person, you know. I mean, I notice the irritation right now, and you know what? Yeah, I'm just irritated. There's irritation in my mind. I'm uncomfortable, that's all. Period. You don't need to go on with it. It's just sometimes it's like that. So you could try Tong Lin with them, like that. That's another thing, yeah. And you have to keep trying. Like it's a thing, and then eventually it changes. It does change.
No, but being comfortable with things.
With the discomfort. A lot of spiritual practice is getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. I think.
Thank you.
Very much so.
And impermanence, I will pass.
And impermanence, it will change. They're changing now, and that's just how they are. I'm not responsible for changing them. You know, there are some people that I've just maybe spend a little bit less time with because they are so self-absorbed in things, and set some boundaries with them. That was the best I could do. And I'm like, yeah. And then you make some time. I have a friend like that, and so what I do is she doesn't live near me, but I call her a couple times a year, and I allot an hour because I know the phone conversation will be all about her. And I just, 2 hours a year, I can give that. I can offer. Right? Now, we do have texts through the year and messages and emails, and that's fine because it's short and sweet. But I feel like she's an old friend, and she's gone through, she struggles, so I can offer that. But I had to cut it down because it was taking over my life, and I just decided, you know, she's constantly asking advice. She's never once followed my advice. I don't need to keep wasting my breath, and there's all these other people that I want to help, and that I've got limited time, and she didn't understand that. She was jealous of that because I've known you longer than them. So I just decided, and she doesn't call me. She never calls me. She can. I always say, give me a call. You know my number. I've got a cell phone. So sometimes I've, you know, you can choose to limit the time gracefully. You know, I didn't say, oh, you know, you're crap. I'm just kind of like, this is all the time I've got, and, you know, or I'm in the country now, I'm not in the country for a few months, and somehow it's leveled out peacefully. You know, it's still, we still have an okay relationship. It's okay. Like that. It's hard. Yes.
How do you take it when it's with someone, maybe a lot of people feel this way, and I feel like it's a societal thing right now, just because of our whole political disarray that's going on. And how do you take that frustration with that person that's up there making all these crazy decisions, and you can't abide by it, yet there's not one thing you can do personally that's going to change things. So you have to sort of come to an acceptance with it, but then all of the people that are around you, like, still fighting for the issues to change that central theory. And I'm trying to just keep it very...
Right. You can vote.
That's
important.
But it's like, how do you, like, daily, it's that daily frustration. You see it in society, and it's just like everyone is up here all the time.
Yes, so what I've noticed is protecting your mind by choosing who you will be around, how you will engage if they get into political conversations. What are you looking at online? Are you watching any TV? What kind of TV are you watching? Does it have commercials? Things like that. And who do you choose to be around? So for me, it's interesting because I'm living in a very conservative area where a lot of people voted for Trump. And but I've somehow really sectioned it out of my life where I don't watch TV much, and I just chose that I don't really want to focus on him in my space. So it's just been eliminated. It's not around me. I just choose not to engage as much. I came from a political background, so I'm very political, and I have very strong views and opinions. And with certain people, it's safe to go in there because I know they're somewhat balanced, and you don't get into screaming matches with people, which I'm not interested in. I'm not interested in convincing anyone of my view, but I'm interested in learning from people and hearing different views and things. But it's been so fragmenting, and so I just somehow have really reduced that in my mind that it's not really a factor for me. But I will vote, and I've gone to marches, and I make a sign, and I mean, there's certain things I'll do, but I go to a march with an attitude of love and connection. That's how I go to marches. I don't go with divisiveness, and I don't say any chants that are negative about people. I'm not interested. It's just not who I am at this point. I used to be different, you know, but, and I can still vote and have my view, but I feel like that I don't want that taking up my mental space.
Yeah.
So sometimes, occasionally, if I'm around and people start talking, you know, I'll sit there quietly. I'll get up, go to the bathroom if it's something, you know, and there's other stuff. And I'm just, fortunately, maybe as a nun, I'm not around it as much. I've just chosen to take myself out of that. And I'd rather talk about positive things about some of the public people, you know. The other thing that I've done. What's that?
It's hard to find positive things on that one.
Yes, well, one of the things that I find is so interesting with how karma changes and that it does change and things are impermanent. So we had a president for 8 years named George W. Bush, right? Was that his name, George W., was it?
Yeah.
Okay, so we remember him. Now, he was for those that were liberal, some of you may have voted for him, no problem. For those of us, for people that were liberal, he was a big target. We hate him. I don't hate him, but he was like it for a while. And then I remember my father was at home and he had TV on a lot, and it was the inauguration of Trump. So he wanted me to come in and watch something, part of it. And when I came in to see on the TV what was going on, there was George Bush and his wife, and they showed up, and we hadn't seen him in some years, right? So I saw him, and I said to my father, and I said, "Oh, look, there's Bush," and part of my mind was happy to see him because of who got elected, right? So, but when he was president, I can't say my mind really felt that way, I actually don't think I was really that, well, no, I'm getting opinionated, sorry. Because the one I always thought was really the problem was the vice president. I don't know if any of you seen the movie Vice. I don't know if this is a crowd that would be interested. It's a very, very good film. It's very well done. And it's about Dick Cheney. Because I just found if you really want to see the history, the stuff I used to know, that seemed to be more of a problem of the wars that we're in right now. And in any event, but I see Bush and I'm kind of like, so the mind can change. He's not a bad person. I bet if I sat down with him, I'd really like him. I've heard he's actually a nice guy. So Trump, multifaceted. You can't, there was a time, the Democrats liked him. He was a Democrat, right? And the thing is, I think about him. So he was a businessman. And the type of businessman he was, he could do whatever he wanted. He had stuff, he could do whatever he wanted. You can't do that as president. You can't. There's Congress. It sounds like he makes these statements as if he's doing whatever he wants, but he's not. And that makes him miserable. Think about him stalking around, moving around the White House. And if you are what they say is a narcissist, it's the worst position to have, to be president of the United States. Because everybody's got their finger pointed at you. So when they say these terrible things about him and he hears it, how do you think you feel? People are dumping on you all the time. It must be awful for him. I have a lot of compassion for him. It's really for my mind, because I don't want to hate him because it only upsets me. I don't need to hate him. He's suffering, right? And it's created a lot of problems in the States, but it's also not just him. We have a collective karma. This is a situation we got on. But don't forget that we just had 8 years of probably one of the most intelligent people for president we will ever have, at least in my lifetime, Barack Obama. I don't know if you've read, I read his books, but one of them, Dreams from My Father, it's well worth a read. It's like a meditation. He's an incredible writer. The guy writes, the guy does this, the guy does, he's unbelievable community organizer, and so I think on that level, a guy with a big heart, we've already forgotten that we had him, but we had some karma there. Now we have, and this is the way politics goes. It goes this way, and then it swings back this way, and people get tired of that, and then it goes back this way, and it goes back this way. That's all. It's useless politics. But I was in it. That's why I'm a nun now. I'm much happier. But it's a way we do things sometimes. Is this a way to bring about positive change on the planet? I thought it was at one point. I worked for a great guy at one point, a congressman, and so sometimes you have to try things. And I was like, this might be a cool way to help and do stuff. I volunteered for different things, and then I was in it, and then I was like, I'm not so sure. There's a lot of ego here. Is this the way? And our electoral process is horrible process. It goes on for 2 years. That's not okay. 2 years of your mental space, of all these posters in your face and people leaflets through the door and commercials, and I don't think that's fair. Other countries don't do it like that. They call an election, and 2 months later there's an election. It's cheap. It's easy. Look at all the money spent. All the poor people in the States, I think. There's no money for them, but they find $30 billion for a presidential election? Really? So that's so sad to me. It's so sad to me. So fortunately I got out of it because it just circles around, and we'll see what happens in 2020, whether something, the Democrats, I think, have some good candidates right now. We didn't have a great candidate last time, but now somebody independent wants to get into the race, and that may divide our vote. So Trump will be reelected. So if you're interested, speak up and vote and get involved with somebody. If you find somebody you like, you can volunteer and do some things. And
Don't let it be consuming.
what's that?
Don't let it be consuming.
I wouldn't let it be consuming. I don't think it's worth it. But it is. I do find it. I have to say, I find it tragic what's going on in the States right now. I find it absolutely tragic. Our healthcare system is a shambles. The Affordable Care Act is better. I mean, we need some kind of universal health thing. Mm-hmm. Every country in Europe basically has it for the most part. We don't have it. I mean, it's absurd. It's absolutely absurd that a country like this, we have Medicare. Roll out Medicare to everybody. Other countries do it. So you won't have your private insurance, and you can have your private insurance if you want something better and have a procedure sooner. But my friends in Europe, they don't have to worry about it. And we worry about it. Mm-hmm. We worry about it. You're a citizen of the country, you go in, you have your card, and that's it. And you don't pay anything. You pay through taxes, you pay through other things, but everybody's covered. Everybody's covered. And then if you want to have a private plan to do something else, that's fine, then do that. But this way, everybody has coverage. I have Pennsylvania Medicaid. That's what I'm on. So there's a number of doctors in Pennsylvania that don't take my insurance. And for me every time I have to do something, I have to find the right person to take care, to make sure they take this. So if I end up in an emergency room needing surgery, I'm not going to have time to check that the anesthesiologist takes my plan, the surgeon takes my plan, this nurse takes the plan, this hospital, and you'll end up with some massive bill.
Oh my God.
Because otherwise I have to check first to make sure. And I found some decent doctors, but it's a total hassle every time I have to need anything kind of special or something like that. So that's what poor people go through. In the United States, that's what it's like, and worse for them. I have a pretty good scene in the States because I've sorted out who to go to, but some people have it worse, where they can't sort those things out. So that's the reality, like that. And I'm grateful for the care I get, because in the Philadelphia area you can get great medical care because there's some great facilities, but that's kind of the reality. So that I find kind of tragic. And so sometimes I do go to a march because, or the fact of what goes on with the guns in this country as well. Mm-hmm. So so things like that. I'm sorry to get me on a thing, my rave, but I don't know. I think these things are important, and Ricochet, I think, sometimes has mentioned, this is some of his views, I think, of not to fragment people and how to be more positive on the planet. So, like that. Other questions, comments? I know we're a bit over time. I think the most important thing, just in closing, is to be kind. So last night we were talking about how to have every moment count in your practice and stuff. And I think it's really, I wanted to say that at the end, was about just being kind overall. And being kind, especially in relation to your difficult person. Everybody deserves kindness. So now, granted, sometimes you were wronged and all this, but if you still continue to show up with a kind attitude, it will only come back to you, 100-fold like that. I think it's really how we maybe can change that karma on the planet so that it's something more harmonious, less fragmented like that. So in closing, let's dedicate, so whatever positive energy we may have created from spending this time, and thank you so much for coming. I hope it's been helpful for you, and I really hope that we will all be able to better manage the difficult people that show up by managing our mind better, and that we can learn to subdue some negative tendencies as best as we can. It does take effort to do over time, and to certainly extend our hearts to the people we consider other as much as we can, but still being gentle with ourselves. And may this help to bring more harmony to the planet And may it also help plant seeds in our mind of virtue that will ripen in us becoming fully realized, as then we're unlimited in benefiting all living beings. O Gewadi no Dudag Lamasam Gejugune Jiwachi Gamalupa Tisalago Parsho Janju Santo Rinpoche Make Banam Kegurji Kebanam Pame Payam Kane Gandu Belwasho. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a few cards if I have a website that has a lot of teachings on it if it's helpful. There's audio and video, and there's a YouTube channel it's connected to, and there is some information. There's a slideshow on the pilgrimage, because I'm leading another pilgrimage to Laudo in the spring of 2020. So if anyone's interested, there will be more and more information on there, and if you need a card, or it's amymiller.com, amymiller.com. Thank you very much.